What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to I can't get out of the welcome back out of my vernacular. But this is cartoon season. I am Tyler, and this is all about animation, cartoons, anime, shows, movies, everything like that. Today, obviously, we're doing Haikyu, anime all about volleyball. I think Haikyu directly translates to volleyball. I'm almost positive. But we are doing the first season just because there's so much to talk about. I couldn't imagine covering the entire show. So I figured I'd break it up into seasons because that makes sense. Only seen the first season as well. So I really don't know what happens beyond this. And we'll get into that at the end of what I think season 2 will be. But yeah, Haikyu. Lots to talk about here. This is a fantastic anime. I really just want to pick it apart completely. I mean, with first episode of the show, I talked about Teen Titans, and I really focused on a few of the characters of the show, and then I focused on what a possible, probably will never happen, but a possible, sequel season to that show would be. With this one, there's just a lot to do. There's a lot to talk about. I want to talk about how great the show is at building hype. I want to talk about a couple of their different classic rivalries of the show. And I want to talk about how every character on this team is perfect for what it needs to be, among some other things. So before we get into it, remember, please go to the Tiger T YouTube. That's where you can find this, as well as any other podcast service. Just go to Cartoon Season or Tiger T in general, and you'll get where you got to go. We'll have a good time. So I do want to start really with the beginning. And it's just the setup of the show. I think the setup of the show is perfect. I think it is a classic shonen start where we have the main character here, Hinata, and he just has raw talent, but he has no one to play with, right? He is the classic shonen character where he's got not everything going for him. He has all the potential in the world, I would say, but he doesn't have a supporting cast. Right? And then we see his first real match where he has to fight the king of the court, right? Kageyama, right? To fight him, and he is the classic antagonist, at least for the first episode. But he's the classic because he is pretty much everything that Hinata isn't, right? Like Kageyama, of course, has a lot of talent, a lot of potential, but he's more analytical, whereas Hinata is more emotional. And then we do have the twist at the end of the first episode where they twist it on you immediately, and it turns out they're now going to the same high school. They graduate from middle school, going to the same high school now, so now they have to work as a team where they pretty much vow that they're going to be rivals. That's a nice little twist. That's something that I wouldn't have expected. If I were to watch the first 90% of this episode, I'd be like, all right, they're going to separate high schools. They're going to build up their own teams around, their own, like, Hinata will probably end up being the captain of his team. Kageyama will be the main focus of his team. And we're going to have their two separate styles kind of clashing, and it's going to be really cool. But nope, they twist it. They're on the same team. Now we got to work with that. So I just think the setup of the show is perfect, for what it has to be. But then speaking of these two, we do move on to the next thing, which is the evolution of their combo move, right? Where Kageyama's the setter. I'm gonna say center, the setter, and Hinata is the spiker, right? And it's perfect because Kageyama is a sniper when it comes to setting for people, and he has crazy sets that most people can't handle. But then you have Hinata, who, if we can just link those two things together, Hinata has all the power in the world. He is one of the most explosive setters probably ever seen. At least in high school. But in the beginning, it doesn't really work out that way, right? They have no chemistry at all. They can't read each other's movements. While Kageyama has all the knowledge of a volleyball player, Hinata has none. Hinata just kind of copies what he sees, isn't only the terminology, isn't only the strategies. It's kind of on both of them, where neither one of them are really adapting to each other. I would say probably towards the beginning, Hinata is probably more leaning towards Kageyama because he more so looks up to Kageyama. But it doesn't help anyone. A little bit later on, though, they do become the demon and his blade, right? I think in the Nekoma fight, the coach of Nekoma described them as that, where Kageyama is the demon and Hinata is the blade. Still not perfect, because that does mean that while they figured it out in terms of how to make it work, like mechanically, it's not perfect, because Kageyama is throwing the ball to Hinata, but Hinata is not thinking. Hinata, very fast, he just runs up to the net, jumps, and then moves his arm. He just spikes the air. And again, while it works mechanically, we'll go into this a little later on, but once teams figure out what he's doing, Hinata's going to get blocked every single time, because Hinata is not making any decisions. He's not like, while he's in the air, he's not deciding where to hit it. He's not looking at his defense, right? And deciding, okay, well, they're about to block me in the front, so let's move. Let's hit this thing a little to the left, or I think I can get over them, or let's hesitate a little bit. Like, no, he just jumps up, closes his eyes, and swings his arm, and it's up to Kageyama to throw it to him. And it's also up to Kageyama to decide what angle he's throwing it at, because as the setter, they explain this too. And I'm not very knowledgeable in volleyball. Literally, all my knowledge comes from this show. But if you throw it up a little early, then it'll go to like the left. If you throw a little late, it'll go to the right. It's kind of like baseball, which I know a little bit more of. Or like in baseball, if you swing early, it'll go to the inside of your swing, whereas if you swing late, it'll go to the outside of your swing. It's kind of like that. But it's still demon in his blade, which sounds menacing, but it's not. It hasn't reached the full potential, because only one of them is thinking about where to send this ball, whereas the other one, the blade, the weapon, it's just that. He's being swung and he is hitting whatever he is told to hit. He's hitting it very hard, but once he's up in the air, there's really no audible. There's no way to make a decision on the fly, because he's not making any decisions. But what's beautiful is that by the end of the season, he opens his eyes, and it's such an anime moment. But like, because up until that point, he was literally jumping with his eyes closed. He was putting full faith in his setter, and when he finally opens them, he doesn't do very well. He misses the ball very many times, because he's never had to think about hitting it before. He just let Kageyama throw it into his palm. But once he opens his eyes and he starts to master that, then the teams get thrown off tilt, because before they knew, okay, he's just going to hit it, and as long as we follow his arm, we can start to block this kid every time. Doesn't matter how powerful he is, doesn't matter how fast he is. But once he opens his eyes, and then he can adjust from whatever Kageyama's adjustments were, then what is it? What did the dude from Nekoma say? He said, once they upgrade, it'll be the demon and a demon. It'll be two demons. Now neither one of them is a tool. Now they're both making decisions. They're both playing off of each other. It's now a two-way street instead of a one-way street. And that's when it gets dangerous. And then we move on later to when there's just two people on the court. We move on to all the other spikers and the setters and the crazy. But I do think the evolution of that move is very nice, because it's without speaking, just through pure actions, we can see their chemistry growing, both as players and as people, and that also like puts a fire under their teammates to be like, they are growing before our eyes. Like, there's stuff that we could do too to grow. These two first years cannot be the only people that are growing and evolving their game. There's gotta be something we can do too. So it's just awesome, And that's only one aspect of the show that shows that. I just chose that one because, they're the two main characters basically. And again, you can see it grow from episode 1 to episode 25. But then we do move on to how I believe that this show not only is one of the best, if not the best anime at doing this, but I think it is one of the best shows at building hype. And having that tension you can cut with a knife. I think this show is one of the best when it comes to that. Maybe I haven't watched enough sports anime, admittedly. I think I've only seen Megalobox first season. Very good boxing anime. Lots of good hype, lots of good stories told with that. And then Yuri on Ice, very very unsuspecting. Not one that you would think, but it's actually really good. It's one about figure skating, which zero interest in figure skating, but the story's really good, and it's honestly the same. Now that I've watched 3 sports anime, I feel like all of them are the same, where you could not care about the sport that they're playing at all. Like, I'd much rather watch like a basketball anime, or I mean, maybe like football, like maybe one of the bigger sports, basketball, football, baseball, that kind of thing. But it doesn't really matter what sport it is, because then you get into it and you're like, wow, I know everything. You're watching Yuri on Ice, and by the halfway through, you're like calling all the moves and everything. But anyway, building hype. And there are some key moments that show this, where we have, the very beginning, we have Hinata's crazy spike against Kageyama, right? Where like the art style of his character design changes. It's like super dark lines, super dark, thick lines, and there's a little bit of a motion blur on his character, and he hits it at like Mach 5. Like, I'm surprised it didn't make a dent in the court. He does hit it out, it's not in, but the power, the sheer power, and then even again building the moment where that whole match they were losing because they didn't have anything. The only person that was semi good was Hinata. Everyone else was there because Hinata is just so charismatic that he was able to convince them to join the volleyball club. But you have that final moment that I think is the final point of the game. But even in that moment, everyone on Hinata's team, everyone in Kageyama's team, everyone watching is like, whoa, what was that? Like, we've never seen something like that, or at least we haven't seen it in a while. And in that moment, that he's gonna be something big, and like, even though he lost, people have their eye on him. And you have another moment where a little bit later on, still fairly early in the show, when Hinata and Kageyama have to do the 3-on-3, right? Their teammate was this man right here, as you can see on the screen on the left. That was, who was that again? Tanaka. That was Tanaka, right? A lot of names. I'm not good at remembering names. Tanaka. But even that, like, that's when they developed the combo. And that right there, building hype throughout the entire match, where in the beginning they weren't that good, and then they kept growing and they kept learning off of each other, and then Hinata closed his eyes, and then, and the team was like, okay, now we have a match. Now we have a match against these first years. And Tanaka's a second year, but there's not really much in it for him except for proving to, is it Daichi? Yeah, proving to Daichi that he is, he is taking this seriously, and he deserves to be here as well. But again, that whole match of them building up, and quote unquote earning their spot, even though they're probably going to be on the team anyway. But the captain's perfect plan to bring them together, like, and it's true, like, we're never going to be a great team if you guys keep bickering, if you guys keep going against each other. Like, you guys are not rivals anymore. You guys can be competitive and you can want to be the best person on your team, but if y'all keep like yelling at each other and like blaming each other for things, like, this team isn't going to go anywhere. And I think that was amazing. And then we have Oikawa almost rallying for the win, right? Where we're kind of in the beginning of like the big tournament, and Oikawa isn't that great of a team, right? I mean, they're pretty good. They were able to make it into this tournament, but clearly they're not that great. Clearly, us crows are definitely a better team than you. And we do have the whole story between the main character of that show, or that team, I don't remember his name, and Daichi, right? But I think the way that the show was able to depict their, not really rivalry, but our school, us crows kind of dominating the whole time, and then Oikawa coming back. I mean, we do have the very anime moments of them having flashbacks, and the power of teamwork and heart and will. They're able to rally back a little bit, but for the end score to be that close, I think Oikawa only lost by a few points. I think it was like 25-20, something like that. It wasn't anything like that huge, but for them to just display how much heart that every team puts into it. Again, Oikawa, not the main school of this show, not the main characters. We'll probably see them again in the next season, but they were there to serve that purpose in my mind. Again, a big thing with the connection with Daichi, but they were there to show that we can't go easy on anyone. Again, Oikawa was not like the laughing stock. They weren't like, oh, easy win, but it just showed that the Crows are they have to, and they're going to put everything into everything, right? I remember that was one of the things in the Oikawa's leader's mind was that, wow, these guys aren't treating us like kids. They're not treating us as if we're nothing to them and we're dirt, and they're gonna easily beat us, and they're gonna only put like 70% energy into this so they can save it for another match. Like, they're going all out. They're sweating, they're tired, they're breathing heavy, like they are still hustling, and that's just a nice thing to see for them, because it validated them, to be like, oh, they're not playing with us, they're not making jokes, they're not trying out new things because we're a whack team, and they can risk a few points, right? They're going all in, and I think that's great to show. That's a nice precedent to set for the entire series, to say, us Crows, we are not, we're just not losing ever. We're never gonna admit defeat ever. Then we move on to another one with the match versus Tokonami. Okay, just want to make sure I said that right. Versus Tokonami, where there was the ball that rolled on the net, and it fell on Tokonami's side, and we won. But that right there was another crazy moment, because the whole time, that was a tough match. That was a tough match that both sides were fighting very, very hard for, and for us to see something like that, something that we have never, like, to me, that's not something that can happen in real life. Like, I don't know how strong the net is. I don't know how taut the net actually is for a ball to roll over it, but for it to, like, the tension in that scene, I think, was tougher than maybe any scene, because you hit the ball, it rolls in the net, and all you can do, because you can't really, like, none of the spikers could probably hit that ball because of what count as hitting the net, I assume. So the only thing they can do is they can just wait to watch it slowly roll across the length of the net and see where it falls. That's really all you can do. And for it to fall and us, it did not get there, like, that was crazy, because that was just like almost fate at that point. And then the last moment I do have is Asahi getting through the iron wall. That was one of the biggest, like, that's probably one of the biggest moments that would make any of us feel like Tanaka in this picture right now. So for audio listeners, I do have a picture of Tanaka very close up. His face takes up probably 60% of the screen right now, and he is mouth wide open, just screaming, "Take that!" He probably just, I don't remember the exact scene that this is from, but I assume he just spiked it, and got us a point, and he is very hype. He's very excited. But this Asahi moment it probably had us all feeling like Tanaka right now, because that was his big thing. That was his whole character for this entire show so far, was that he was amazing. He was the ace, and he got beat down by the iron wall. He couldn't get a single spike past these guys, and he basically quit volleyball over it. And then for him to finally get a spike through them, for us to, I think there was a triple block. Like 3 people jumped up, and he was able to power it through their arms and get us a point. Like, that moment was like, we're gonna win. Like, we're absolutely gonna win this. There's nothing like that right there. There's nothing we can't do against this team. All they have, I mean, not all they have, but on paper, all they have is them being the iron wall. We got Asahi, the traumatic victim of this wall. Get through it, we're gonna win. Nothing we can't do. Yeah, those are just a few of the moments that I think are amazing in building hype. There are other moments. There are many moments, probably like at least 1 to 5 moments every episode, you know, that has the hype and the all the tension and everything like that. But those are the 5 I chose because I think those display over the whole show, and they're all very different. But other than hype, the show does a lot of other things well, and one of the main things, obviously, with them being a sports anime is they do rivalries very well, and every team that is a rival is so different from each other. You have Nekoma here. They're known as the Cats, famous rival of the Crows. We have the Cats versus the Crows. The like trash can. What did they say? The like trash can rivalry, or the garbage rivalry, or dumpster, something like that. Classic, right? We have all that history, and so we're finally getting another match with them, and we see this main dude here, Kazume. I don't know. I'm gonna say Kazume. He is the strategist. He's the general. He is the if you ever watch Naruto, he is the Shikamaru of this group, in my opinion. And he doesn't have a lot of skills. Same as Shikamaru, where Shikamaru to me doesn't really have a lot of really dope like jutsu, but he's just so smart, and he can just break everything down to its core so well that makes up for it. It's almost like with like Rock Lee. Like Rock Lee doesn't have any ninjutsu or genjutsu, but he's so good with taijutsu that it makes up for it. So with Kozume, he does the same thing, where when he was introduced, that's kind of how he was introduced before we even saw him play a game. But as the game was going, they start losing, right? The Cats start losing. But in my mind, I was like, after we score like 3 or 4 points, Kozume is just learning from us at this point. He does not care that the Crows are scoring, because he's just learning. He's just picking apart every single person's strengths and weaknesses right now, and once we score like 4 points, he's gonna unleash his strategy, and we're gonna lose. I don't know that. Do we lose this game? I'm pretty sure we do lose this game. I actually don't remember. I think we do, but in the end, it is because they are the better team. Like, not only do they have Kozume, who is a general on the battlefield. We don't really have anyone like that, at least currently. Now we do have, who is the, Sugawara. We do have Sugawara. We don't utilize him very much. We do utilize him, later on in the Josai game. But he right there is the closest thing we have to a Kozume. Even then, he's not so much as like the general that I think Kozume is, but I think he's close. But even past that, the Cats are a better team than us at the time, at least, where this is the main game at this point in the show that tells us that even though we have better weapons than this team, like they don't have an explosive spiker like Hinata. They don't have the tricky. Well, Kozume's close, but we don't really have they don't have the tricky setter in Kageyama. You know, we don't really, you know, our was our libero there yet? You know, Asahi, you know, like we have all these weapons that I think pound for pound are better than them, but they have experience playing as a team where we don't. You know, we haven't played very many games at this point together. I think this is probably our first match as a team, I think. But I do love that though, because it forces our team to harden a little bit. It forces us to grow as a team and get to know each other and be like, we have to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. You know, we have to know how to adapt when someone is hitting walls or isn't quite making those plays. You know, how can we change our individual game to help this person out of that mud. And the cats are just better, and we do have something very nice, very, very wholesome, where they both keep wanting to play, and they play like a dozen games, like 20 games or something crazy, until they're all dead. And the coaches are like, all right guys, no, we can't play any more games. The cats do win every game, and it's pretty close every time, but it just goes to show that experience is very, very important in something like this. And ultimately, in the end, I think that is what kills the Crows. You know, why they don't, you know, why they only make it so far in the big tournament of this season. But again, with this team, I'm interested to see how this team grows too. You know, before we move on from them, I'm very interested to see how they grow with next season. You know, what do they learn? You know, do they start developing more like heavy weaponry? How much more dangerous does Kozume get? I don't know. We'll see. Were they even in the tournament? I don't remember. I don't remember. But yeah, and then we do move on to another team that was in the tournament. We have Aoba Josai. I'm just calling him Josai. You know, this is the team with Oikawa. Oh, right, that was Oikawa. I think I misspoke earlier. I do apologize. Right, but going back to the building hype thing, I got a little confused, but Oikawa almost rallying for the win. That was this team. I got confused with them in the Tokonami. That's what I got confused by. So everything I said was right. I just mislabeled the team names. Oikawa almost rallying for the win was crazy because these guys were like a top 4 team and we beat them, but we didn't have, they didn't have the conductor, right? That was the thing. Was that Oikawa wasn't there. You know, we did beat him technically, but you know, he only came back for the last like 4 points that we scored, and he still almost carried the team back to a victory. Crazy, absolutely crazy. You know, so that was nuts. Water's so good. But now we do have our actual match against these guys. They have all their weapons, including the conductor Oikawa. All right, and gosh, this is a great rivalry. This, I think, is one. Well, the Cats and the Crows are off of Legacy, and I obviously expect to see more of them next season. I think this is the main rivalry. You know, and I do think that Oikawa and Kageyama, you know that whole rivalry between them, I think that's very important. But again, this team is just a better team. They have more experience playing together. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's a big thing with Oikawa being the conductor, is that he knows how to handle every player on the court. You know, he knows how to make them better, and he knows how to pick them up when they fall. You know, I think that a big thing too with this rivalry is that there is a lot of intimidation. You know, I think that the Crows are still very inexperienced, and Oikawa and those guys are easily able to put a little bit of fear in their hearts, because there's no reason for them to not be confident. Like so far they have been destroying every team they faced, where pretty much every team that we faced, us as the Crows, has been kind of hard fought. We had to there are some very muddy matches we've had so far with Oikawa at the helm of his team. They've just, it's been like 25-11, and which is nuts. And him more from being the conductor and just showing how different he is than Kageyama. Kageyama is that, like I said earlier, with him, he knows all the strengths and weaknesses. Kageyama doesn't. He doesn't really know what everyone else is good and bad at. He doesn't really know how to play to anyone else's game. Him and Hinata have a very strong connection, but other than that, with everyone else, he just kind of goes generic, and he's like, all right, well, I'll just set it to them and whatever. But with Hinata, that's when he gets into the actual minutia of how should I set this. And I think that's an important distinction, because even later on, there's two things. One, with Oikawa and them figuring out Kageyama and Hinata's hand signals. Well, that's what they did, or not their hand signals, their vocal signals, where Hinata would say a certain thing a certain way to denote what kind of shot he's going to make. They figure it out, which is very clever. They figured it out very quickly. And even then they had to kind of switch it up and now do hand signals, right? Very, very cool. Something that I don't know if there's a real thing in volleyball. They do like hand signals and stuff. But I think that's really cool. But again, it goes to show how smart his team is, and especially him, where he's very much like Cosmo, where he can break stuff down, where with something like the Crows, they don't really have anything like that. Like I was saying earlier, the closest they get is Sugawara, where Kageyama keeps getting shut down. He keeps getting read, analyzed like a book, like a children's picture book. Green eggs and ham, very simple. And then Sugawara comes in and just wild, absolutely crazy. He starts learning what everyone is doing. Him being off the floor, watching everyone play for so long, he has so much knowledge. Like, he knows what they're good at. He knows how to set people up a certain way. He's even reading the other team, and there's so many moments where he helps his team score a point, because he's like, hey, he talks to Hinata, he's like, hey, so what they're gonna do is this, and they're gonna expect this, so we're gonna do this, and then they score a point. And then he goes over to Tanaka, and then he goes over to Asahi, and then he goes over to who's the other one, Tsukishima, and he's like, so they're gonna expect this, so you're just gonna kind of lob it right here. Like, he was just picking them apart at that point, and right there we're like, oh man, we got a game now. Like, they're not killing us anymore. We can't really get over them, but we got a match. And then even their dynamic duo, like their 1 and 2, their 2 and 1, with Sugawara and Kageyama being the duo, being the, whenever one of us is in trouble, or whenever the other one would be better in the scenario, let's tag out. Them making each other stronger. Like when Kageyama he wasn't thrown out. I was gonna say thrown out. When he was put on the bench, he was furious. He was more furious with himself though, because he knows he can do better. And so Sugawara being there and kind of schooling him, he was just mad at himself, but he was ready to learn, and that was the point. That was the whole thing with the coach, Ukai, right? Ukai? With him being like, he like, that's my plan. I want him to get mad. I want him to be on the floor so bad. I want him to learn. I want him to take a few notes from Sugawara, because at the end of the day, while you, at your core, and not only at your core, but with your potential, you are a better setter than Sugawara, he has so much more knowledge, so much more experience, and not only that about volleyball and how to play, but with how to deal with teammates. Kageyama's never been good at that. Even his best teammate Hinata, they still butt heads every now and again. So Sugawara is teaching him a whole lot about how to become a better all-around setter and not just focus on a few things and then kind of be, run-of-the-mill with other things. Learning from people, playing to other people's strengths instead of having everyone adapt to him. And all of that is because of Oikawa. As much as I hate Oikawa, it's funny because my good friend Raymond, you may know him from our Untitled and Unfocused podcast, where we talk about anime among other things. He said his favorite character is Oikawa. He has read or watched, I don't know, I think all of Haikyu, I assume. So I didn't want him to elaborate on him. I didn't want him to give me any spoilers, but he did say Oikawa was his favorite character, and I vehemently disagree. I hate Oikawa with all of my heart. I think he's very arrogant, and I can't wait for us to destroy him, hopefully in season 2. But I get why he would say that. Like, he is making this team better. Like, he obviously makes his team better. We see that with every possession, but he is single-handedly, and he's not the only one. Every match that the Crows have fought have made them a better team, but Oikawa, just him, you can take away his whole team, just Oikawa is making the Crows a better team. Like, it's his fault that they took out Kageyama and they put Sugawara in, and we have that growth. It's his fault that Kageyama is now growing with other people. Like, he hates Tsukishima, but he's now playing to Tsukishima's strengths, and that has scored them many points in just this matchup. He's now learning, he's now, become more comfortable with asking Asahi and Tanaka, hey, what kind of sets do you like? What do you want in this scenario? You know what I mean? He's learning to be more than a setter. Like, it just single-handedly, Oikawa is evolving this team. It's crazy. And in the end, though, Oikawa and Josai do win. It is a very hard-fought match, but the last, because I'm pretty sure it was 1-1, one match to one match. The third match does end 33-31. Crazy because, match point is 25, so that means that they kept going back and forth. 33-21, very, very rough. Us Crows, we are very sad. We are moping out of the place. Saying thank you to everyone who was supporting us and watching us in the stands. But, it sucks. It sucked to lose, and I was sad to see that, but I do think it makes sense. And I'm going to talk about what I think season 2 will be, and I'll obviously touch on some of this. But just to say it real quick, a little bit of a tease. I do think it makes sense that they lost. I think if they won, I think it would be too cliche of a sports anime, of a shonen sports anime, for them to just have a bunch of weapons and them come together with no experience and them gain all the experience, like, as they play to win the championship. Like, I think that would be, like, bad writing, And also, like, what would they do with season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Like what? Like, we already won. Like, we can do nothing but get better. It wouldn't make sense. I am glad they lost in like the writing aspect of things. Although, a nice little silver lining. Oikawa also lost. So I hate him, and I hope he breaks his legs. But then we do move on to the last part before we get into season 2 predictions. I just want to touch on, briefly, how I feel like every character, every part of this team is perfect, or this team has to be. Now, obviously, they're not perfect in the way that they win everything, because I just said they lost. Right, they lost their big game. They didn't make it to the finals. So we're not there yet. But I do think every part of this team has so much potential, and even the third years, where they do have a little more potential to grow with these first years coming in, second years being here, having more steam. I do think it all gets put into a very nice pot. So we'll go through. I'm not gonna talk about every single teammate, because there are some teammates that don't do a whole lot. So I feel like it's worthless to talk about them. Even though they are, they're here, they're doing stuff, but still, it's not worth it. But there are a bunch of them I do want to touch on. Obviously, we do have Hinata, where he's the explosive decoy. I didn't really touch on that too much so far, but he's a decoy, right? Where he is the wild card. He is the one that can run very fast, jump very high, and hit very hard. And he's loud, like I got it, he's the charisma, he not as much as Tanaka, but he is that character, and that is very good for him. One, scoring points with his palm, but then also scoring points with other people's hands, where we start looking at that crazy combo move in the beginning. Everyone's like, yo, we have to watch number 10. We have to watch number 10. And then they put their all attention number 10, and we forget that every character on this team is pretty dope. Again, there's a few of them that are more filler characters in my opinion, but Asahi is our ace. Like, you forget about that. Number 10 is not our ace. Asahi is our ace, and he will go through you. We made it through the iron wall. Tanaka, when we're giving Tanaka support, Tanaka will score. So like even Tsukishima, who we've seen, if when Kageyama actually plays to him, Tsukishima, a very smart spiker. But I do think all of that works tenfold when Hinata is on this team, because whether he scores a point or not directly, he can contribute to almost every point scored. And I'm very interested to see where he's going to go from here. I imagine the only thing he can do from here is get better with defense. Well, so defense and spiking, not spiking. Defense and what's it called? Serving. That's the one. Defense and serving, he's not too good at. I imagine he's going to get a lot better in both of those things over the next season. I don't really think there's too much for him to work on like pure offense. I think the only thing is for him to just get smarter, with him, like me talking about earlier, where he opened his eyes and he's starting to make his own decisions. I think we can just kind of build on that. But probably we're going to lean a little bit more into defense and serving to make him a better, kind of fill in his weaknesses. Then we got Kageyama, who's the sniper setter, right? He has these crazy sets, and I think he plays well to the 1-2 punch with him and Hinata, but also he's learning a lot more to play to other people's strengths, and that makes him a better player. Hinata he's already working with, but that also makes people like Tanaka, Asahi, and Tsukishima much better and much more useful on the court, not because they were useless, but because a spiker can only be as good as a setter, and vice versa. So if the setter isn't putting in all the effort necessary to pull out the most potential, like Sugawara was doing, there's only so much they can do. But I do think that's going to be a main focus on his character, is that he is going to be working with them, everyone else more closely, to start maybe having some special combo moves with them, ones that are different than what we see with Hinata, but ones that will give their offense even more of an edge and even more well-rounded, where teams won't figure out Hinata's strategy and be like, all right, well, we shut him down, everyone else is pretty bog standard. So as long as we play our solid defense, we can beat the Crows. So that's really good. Daichi being the captain. Again, we're talking about the third years with season 2 predictions in a second. We'll talk more about the third years, but Daichi being the defensive captain, right? He brings the energy, he lifts everyone up, and then very good on defense. He's the one that they look to when the other offense is kind of killing it. We look to him to step up and be really good at receiving. I think he's perfect for that. He's not a very explosive character. He can score, but he's not a very explosive character. But I think that's where he fits best with this team, is being the captain, having everyone's back, and also getting a few really dope receives every now and again. Oh man, doing 2 episodes today. I did record the Teen Titans episode right before this, so my throat. Probably not going to record a 3rd episode. I do have a 3rd one planned, but probably not going to record that today. Okay, and then we do have Sugawara, which is the all-around setter. Also the closest thing we have to kind of a general type that I was comparing him to Kozume, where he just knows, he probably knows every character the best out of anyone on the floor. And I think that is something that he, is going to lend to Kageyama over the next season. It's already what Kageyama's already started to do, but I think Sugawara is playing his part perfectly. I think that him not being on the floor is fine because we can use him as like our secret weapon. Because there's so many people that are like, wait, number 2? Wait, he's a third year? Why is he not their starting setter? And I think that's his role perfectly, where he learns about everyone, can give everyone advice. Very much like the second captain almost. Like, it's very fitting that he's number 2 behind Daichi's number 1. And I think whenever we're in a tough spot, we can just switch Kageyama out for a few points, get Sugawara in here, revamp, rejuice this team. And there we go. That's all we need from him, and it works. We have Asahi, the ace, of course. I think he's just power, and when he's on his game, when he can't be stopped. And I think he is the perfect, balance to Hinata, where I think Asahi and Hinata play off each other perfectly, where he is the decoy, and then Asahi comes in and scores easily. I think him building up and maybe being a little more confident, and being a little more part of the team, and being a little less scared to tell people what to do, because he is a third year, the same as Daichi and Sugawara, where I feel like he can become a better player by telling Kageyama, hey, this is what I want, or so I think that's probably what they'll work on next season. But we do have Nishinoya, which is their libero. He's just like, he keeps the ball in the air, and he is one of the best at it, and I love him for it. I love whenever a ball's about to hit the floor and then he somehow tips it up. I don't even know how it's physically possible, some of the stuff he does, but he is their second, or I guess like other side of the coin with Daichi. With them two together, a ball ain't really ever hitting the floor. And I'm really interested to see, with him, I think honestly he's probably gonna be more of a teacher role, where most of the characters so far are going to learn a lot. I think he's gonna be more of a teacher, where he's gonna show, especially a lot of the first years, how to play a little better defense, because that was their big thing. They're not very good at receiving. We have Tanaka. He's the energy. He's probably the third string, spiker, but I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think that when he's mentally there, and he has his confidence truly, not just on the outside but on the inside. Who said it? I think Ukai said it, where he was like, when all that is true, he has the ability to be the ace of a team. So he is like the second ace. And he's also the energy, right? When he's up, the whole team is up. When Tanaka is quiet, that's when the team is doing bad, because the whole team could be quiet, but Tanaka is still in there. When he's not in there anymore, we gotta take a timeout and start reevaluating what's going on the court with everyone. Then we have Tsukishima. Again, he's very meticulous, right? Him getting a little more shine with Kageyama, and Sugawara, giving him more ups and not just focusing on the flashy Hinata or Asahi. I think he might be secretly the most dangerous spiker on the whole team, because he's not just power. He thinks for every single second that he's getting ready to jump, and then he's in the air, and then as he's about to hit it. Like, he's very smart. He's very good. Then you have some of the non-players. You have Kyoko as the manager. I think her, she does bring a certain level of energy, even though she's very quiet and not good with words. Her making the banner like that just put a fire in everyone's heart. Like, that was so awesome. And then you have Takeda, who is the faculty advisor. Not really the coach, especially anymore, but he is there. He's learning with everyone else, but he is there to keep everything together. I think he's doing a very good job. And you have Ukai, who is their coach, and he's kind of the secret underdog coach almost, but he is bringing the best out of these characters, out of these players. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what next season is going to hold, because with next season, not really a whole lot of things, but I do want to touch on a couple things. Everything I just said was kind of part of that almost, but I do think every character is going to grow and learn. That's just what happens with shows and anime, of course. But I'm very interested to see what specifically happens, I guess, how do they grow? How do they play off of each other? How do they get better? What more weapons do they develop? I think a big focus this season is going to be defense, which on paper might not be as exciting as spikes and sets and everything like that, but I would love to see it, because I think that is a big hole in their game, is their defense. They're not bad, but it's really nothing to talk about, where their offense, it's like, oh, they got Hinata, they got the decoy, they got Asi, they're developing their real solid foundation of a set game. Like, we don't talk about that with their defense. So I think that's a big thing they're going to work on. And I don't know. Do you think we're gonna see those games again? I don't know if they're gonna have a friendly game versus Josai before the tournament. I could see them facing the Crows again. I think that'd be really cool. Be interested to see what other teams they face in the meantime. Like, do we see the Iron Wall again? Do we play a exhibition versus the Iron Wall? Do we play an exhibition versus Tokonami? I don't know. Will there be any new characters, or is it because it's still the same school year? Are we not getting any new characters till third season? I would say most likely we're just gonna stick with these ones. But I do think the kind of big picture, the big brain decision is, well, this next season is gonna be another tournament. That's gonna be the main focus, I assume. Gonna be I think it's the fall or the spring. I don't remember which one we just had. We either just had the fall or the spring, and now we're going to the other one. We do have the third years of this being their last time they're stepping on the floor with these people, because after that they graduate. So I think that's going to be a big focus as well. But again, the kind of big brain decision is, are they going to win this tournament? They lost the last one. Are they going to win this one? And to me, there's kind of three ways they could go with this, right? There's only three outcomes. They are not going to make it to the finals again. They're going to lose in the finals, or they're going to win in the finals. And to me, I think losing before the finals, I think, would be kind of crazy. I'm sure they could do it, because every match can be exciting in its own way. So, we could still feel like this was a good season of a show, even if they don't make it to the finals again. I don't think they're going to do that, though. I think that since this is the third year's last, their kind of last dance, for going off a Chicago Bulls kind of analogy here, this is their last dance. I think it'd be crazy for them to not at least make it to the finals. I think it'd be very empty if they don't. So I'm just gonna rule that possibility right off the bat. Do they win or lose in the finals? I think if I'm forced to make a decision and forced to put my money somewhere, I would say they win. I would say that if this wasn't the third year's last tournament, if there was one more after this, I think they'd make it to the finals and they'd lose. And then with their last and final one, they make the finals again and they finally have enough to win. But I think that is going to play a huge part in the writing of this season, and I do think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to be perfect. I do think every game is somehow going to be even closer than any game we've seen in this first season, but I do think they're going to win. I do think it's going to be an amazing moment that the writers of the show want to build up. Now obviously, this is based off a manga, so I'm sure you could just read it and you'd know what would happen, but I do think that's where it's going to go. I do think it's going to flip-flop, though, because to my knowledge, I think there's 4 seasons of the show, with a 5th one either confirmed or rumored. I'm not sure. I do think if they go all the way and they win this one, I do think the third season, they're not going to win. I think because there's going to be more first years. They're going to have to build up the experience and the teamwork again. There's going to be new weapons, new chemistries to form and everything. But I do think for this one, I do think the odds that they win are higher than the odds that they lose. But we'll see. We'll see what actually happens. Because again, this show, fantastic. Absolutely incredible. I'm very excited that I finally recorded this episode so I can watch the second season. Let me know what you thought of the first season. All your favorite characters are. I mean, mine probably... I don't know. I think it's easy to say Hinata is my favorite character. But I think low-key, Sugawara might be my favorite character. I think just with all of his knowledge and how he's able to pick apart things, I think that's really cool. Let me know, what your favorite match was. What you thought of the ending of their very hard fought battle versus Josai, and what you want to see in a second season of this, because I'm excited. But yeah, I think that is everything. Very good show. Very excited for second season. And yeah, let me know what else you want me to cover. Of course, last time, if you didn't see it, I did cover for the first episode. I did Teen Titans. We got cartoons, anime. Obviously, cover shows. Haven't done any movies yet. I'm sure that'll come very soon. Again, either cartoon or anime movies. Let me know what you want me to do. 'Cause yeah, we're gonna keep rolling with this. And then yeah, I think that is everything. So until next time, keep watching Haikyu. We're gonna keep rolling with it, and we'll see how it stacks up against the first season.